Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. You are about to join a frequency that will open your mind, expand your heart, and activate your spirit. Thank you for joining Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby Medium and Master Energy Therapist. Kelly believes in the power of the Spirit Baby. She speaks with babies in spirit before life, in the womb, and after life. She supports, teaches, and guides others to tune into the intuitive and mystical parts of life for greater wisdom. Join her in meeting your soul baby and build your connection and relationship with deep love and trust. Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio with your host, Spirit Baby Medium, Kelly.
Welcome to episode 71, October 11th, 2019, A Sensitive Conception and Pregnancy, The Life of the Empath. Are you an empath? What does it mean to have empathic sensitivities? How do you listen to your intuition with trust and clarity? How can you create energetic care and wellness in conception? This is going to be a fun topic, the empath. I have a lot to say about the empath. Many people get confused and they think, well, maybe you mean empathic, which is a very different definition. And the word empath, I heard, over 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, I remember moving in my early 20s, moving from New Jersey to California with, I want to say with high hopes and dreams, of course. Who doesn't have that in their 20s? But just an adventure. I've never been to California, but for some reason I knew I would end up here, which is very interesting. And at that time, I didn't feel very super intuitive and psychic as I almost feel like I am more now. Maybe because I've had enough experience and worldly connections to see what that, how that kind of unfolded for me. But I remember going into this little community in Burbank, into this little, maybe it was a new age shop, and it was like some type of empath meeting, like just connecting and just what does it mean to be an empath, and here's my tribe of people. And I wanted to run out of that room, I'm not gonna lie, because I was like, what, these people, these men and women, they seemed just so nervous and anxious, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this the empath? What is this? This is like too much. It's like everybody's feeling everybody. Like, what does this mean? And I remember some people wanted to connect. They're like, taking notes because no one had phones back then. So it's like, oh, here's a piece of paper, remember this? And I'm just like, all right, see you guys, thanks. And I was like, I never went back there again. I never connected with any of the people. I just felt like it wasn't my energy. It wasn't the right space. But, I had to explore. We have to explore different things. When people see different, healers or different therapists, and, sometimes things are like, oh, okay, maybe this could be good or maybe it's not. But that's when you have to build. That's a whole other conversation of building your intuitive, trusting inner space that's very strong. Maybe we'll do an episode on that, actually. That could be really good because intuition is connected with being an empath, but it's not, all of it. There's more pieces to it. And so I have some definitions. I feel like we have the internet, right? And so when I learned about what an empath was, there was no internet. It was like nobody did anything on the internet. Now I'm telling people how old I am. It was just barely coming out. You just either read a book or you go to a store, you go to a shop, you sit in a workshop, you listen to the elders of the psychic world or of the spirit world that have something to share about it. But there was this one woman. Don't you hate that when you know this is like the tip of your brain, the tip of your tongue, like what is that? There's this one woman who wrote a lot about empaths, and I'd have to really, I can't find her and remember, but she had the most amazing information about the empaths. Now this is teasing people, right? Because now I can't officially find this woman and all her information. I wonder if she just pulled her information off, so that's why it doesn't exist, or there's other bombarding information about empaths, because things are coming out now. There's a lot of empathic people around the globe in different races, different cultures, different socioeconomic statuses. There's no judgment for the empath. So I have a definition here I got. It's the American Empath Association. And yes, there is an American Empath Association. and this is new to me, and they define an empath as someone who understands the mental or emotional states of others in a way that defies conventional science and psychology. Empaths have the ability to sense the feelings, thoughts, and energies of people, plants, animals, places, or objects. In addition to sensing, empaths absorb the energy of those around them. Empaths often experience stress or illness if they are bombarded by too many negative emotions. Empaths can also use their abilities to help others by imagining themselves in someone else's situation and connecting with them on a deep level. And this is the American Empath Association, and they have a 17 types of empaths list. And I'm going to actually go over that in a little bit, because I was like, 17 empaths? Wow, I'm like pretty impressed with that. I didn't know there were so many kinds of empaths, but of course, why would there not be? And you can see maybe when I share that list with you that maybe you're like, oh yeah, that's me right there, that's me. Maybe you're like a combination of many things. And so this is one of the, definitions. But, and there's another definition I heard, which I thought was interesting, was the empathic spectrum. So maybe those 17 types, or the empathic spectrum is the umbrella of maybe those 17 types that are underneath. And because there is no real certain definition, there's nothing fully defined on what this empath means, or even where did it come from? Who even started this term? That's what I want to know. Where did this, we go into these other terms of like clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsentience. I feel like there's a foundation, or mediumship, mediumistic abilities. Like there's a foundation, but I'm not really sure where the foundation of the empath comes, but it'd be very interesting to look more into that. I like Judith Orloff. I feel like she's all over the internet. I actually met her, again, I feel like 20 years ago, Barnes & Noble in Santa Monica, and she was doing a book signing. She is a board-certified psychiatrist, and she has a bunch of books, and she's probably more than what I'm saying, because she's in the spiritual community for quite some time, and I thought at one time she maybe had medical empathic stuff that she was sharing, but you can always look her up, because I am sharing a lot from her information about empaths, because she wrote a whole book about it. And the book she wrote is called The Empath Survival Guide, and I have not read it. Maybe this can be added to my millions of other books that I'm reading. Just got to go in order here. She defines empaths are highly sensitive, finely tuned instruments when it comes to emotions. They feel everything, sometimes to an extreme, and are less apt to intellectualize feelings. Intuition is the filter through which they experience the world. Empaths are naturally giving, spiritually attuned, and good listeners. If you want heart, empaths have got it. Through thick and thin, they're there for you, world-class nurturers. So it's a nice definition. Of course, now I'm going to go into, without being boastful, my empathic abilities. I discovered, I would say when I was 15 years old, I was outside in my backyard, New Jersey, the suburbs, and I was just like going through these little trees. There's like these little trees you can like almost bend down and kind of like walk through. And I remember I stopped, and it was so clear to me. I just stopped, and I looked at this one tree, and I'm like, and this is me just experimenting with, I started having a lot of feelings at 15 years old, which they say if it doesn't come before puberty, it comes after puberty, your abilities. So a lot of kids have all these like amazing, when I was 3, I talked to grandpa through the veils of death, and when I was 4, I predicted, this accident, and I was not that kid. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I blanked out everything in the early years, a whole other story. So my abilities came with puberty, and so when I was walking through these woods, and I stopped in this one tree, I was like, what? And I felt it so deep in my body. I went, why do I know how this tree feels? Right? I'm like, okay. I was like, I know how this tree feels. I'm like, okay. So then I just kind of was observant of it. I didn't have anyone to tell me, no, you're wrong, or who are you? I just kind of accepted that, and then I noticed that the same thing happened with animals. So then I started to like my cat looking at me. I'm like, why do I know what she's thinking and how she feels? And so then it was more playful for me, because, again, exploring this part of my extrasensory awareness. And then I noticed it with people, right? I felt like it was like plants, animals, and then more with people. And when you're an empath and you're young and you say things to people, they don't like it. They do not like it. Especially I noticed my dad or men, I noticed if I said how their emotions were and they weren't an emotional person, they don't want that shared. And I had to experience that even in my 20s when I worked in an office and I was just blurting out stuff that I saw with people. But I thought everybody was like looking at all that stuff. Now, so many years later, more in my own spiritual practice and training, I realize, oh, okay, I see. And, so my journey of the empath began at 15 years old. And so I've had a lot of world schooling when it comes to refining and understanding really the deeper energy around that. And I'm not only empathic, of course, I have other spiritual abilities and mediumistic and clairvoyant that are interwoven with my empathy. But my empathy, my clairsentience is very strong for me. I almost feel like I've always wondered if I was a physical empath, which I don't even know if that was a term, but I found that it is a term because I feel like my ability to feel physically in my own body from others and just the way I feel energy is just very sharp. It's very clear. It's very, what is the word I'm looking for? It's very, right. It's very correct. Those are not the right words. Not right and correct. It's just, I feel like there's a truth to it that I've decided, of course, in the work that I'm doing and just even earlier on, is to begin to share the things that I saw with people. And then people were like, what? They were shocked, confused, overwhelmed, and appreciated. And so, but now it's different because now I'm shifting. I'm like, I'm going to use my empathic abilities to my advantage because I don't like a lot of the things that the empathic people have to go through. And I am like a mentor for empaths, and I really feel that there is a purpose in our globe and our world to have people that feel very deeply. This is, a way to end more violent tendencies. When you're empathic, you're feeling and you're sensitive, it's a different consciousness. It's a different awareness. And there are different degrees and levels of empaths, right? And so psychology today, I have a list of 10 here. This is their definitions or how they go deeper into what it is that empaths are about. And number one here is empaths are highly sensitive. Of course, yeah. And they go more into that, but I'm going to just kind of take my own awareness around that. And again, that's the physical connection, that's the emotional connection, and not to be confused with highly sensitive, highly perceptive sensitivity, which is a little different, but they can definitely interlink with each other. And from my perspective, too, I feel like the empath to me is a clairsentience, right? Because that's the ability to feel and to connect with energy, connect with emotion. But I also feel like there's an emotional ability that some people are very emotional and there's a deep connection there. So you can be an emotional empath. That's kind of my definition. And also I've seen people in the past probably year, I've noticed that you can be empathic and have sensory issues. And so this one, I feel like I've surprised people when they're like, oh yeah, I never really thought if I had a sensory issue. So some adults are walking around with a lot of sensory issues, and I know the word issue isn't very positive, but it's true. If you feel like the way your feet touch the ground or the way your skin feels, the way you hear things, the way, there's a piece of empathic resonance in there and being an empath, but I feel like there's a sensory issue too that's not being addressed. And what happens as an adult, you can be what I would say an empathic, overstimulated sensory person. You just have to know your boundaries, know your own body, know your own consciousness, and how your own self-care looks. Otherwise, you're going to go sensory overload, and then you're not of service to you, to your environment, especially if you're in conception and pregnancy, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment because I want to talk about how being an empath impacts your fertility and pregnancy and the choices that you make along the way. But first, psychology today, 1, empaths are highly sensitive, got that. 2, empaths absorb other people's emotions. Absorb is such a dramatic word to me. But yeah, of course, there's a sense of energetic absorption, but then there's also an energetic release. So as you absorb, you release. And this is the thing I talk about. I have a 90-minute empathic download, like what is, how to be an empath and how to work with your energy. And one of the things I talk about is, as there's so much information around, empaths feel negative energy, negative energy, negative energy. But where an empath feels negative energy, an empath feels positive energy and has the ability to manipulate and change energy and to experience that in a very deeply soulful, beautiful way. And so, yes, where there's negative emotion, there's positive emotion as well. And so, let's say you're absorbing something negative, whether it's a family member or a friend, you have to know yourself very well spiritually as an empath. You have to know where your edges are, where your boundaries are, what you're creating and what your own wellness looks like. And it's different for everybody. Some people have to go in and hibernate and do a bath and do a massage or do some deeper meditative work, read a book, stretching. It's different for everybody because energy is energy and it moves into the body in different ways. And so I know as an empath for me, my muscles get tense. And in the very fibers and the tension of my body, I'm holding emotion. And now how do I get to release that for the sanity and the love of myself? And so, yes, empaths absorb, but there's different degrees of that. 3, many empaths are introverted. False, I would say. Many empaths are introverted and extroverted. You can't really label that. I guess there's a tendency that a high amount of empaths tend to be introverted, but that, again, that's not 100% right because I've seen outgoing empaths. So then how does that fall into that kind of alignment there with the numbers? 4, empaths are highly intuitive. I want to say yes, because if you're feeling energy and you're feeling things before you understand and know it, but this is a tricky one to me because my empathic skills are not just empath because I have the clairvoyance and the ability to see before. So that would create a level of intuition that's stronger, I feel, because I'm being clear and connecting with it and allowing myself to explore, that space. So, I don't want to say yes or no for that, but, empaths are highly intuitive, trust that, move with it. And it doesn't mean that at times you have doubt and stuff, which is totally fine, but a majority of your energy would be on the tipping end of just intuition. 5, empaths need alone time. I would say, yeah, if you're feeling energy, emotional energy, worldly energy, environmental energy, people energy, of course you're going to want alone time because then you get to see where is your body, how do you reconnect, like where's your balance. 6, empaths can become overwhelmed in intimate relationships. I don't know about that one either. Even just speaking from my own awareness of an intimate relationship, I feel like people are overwhelming no matter what. So it really depends, again, to the level of your empathy and where you fall on that. Because I think about my older brother, who he seemed very empathic on some level, but then not. It almost felt like he was narcissistic at times or had sensory issues. So, and I'm looking at that going, well, he was very overwhelmed by relationships and he didn't get into a lot of relationships. So that's a really good, insight and thing to explore. I can't even say for sure. 7, empaths are targets for energy vampires. And what are energy vampires? Those are people that take and suck your energy, right? Everyone knows energy vampires. They're everywhere. And, of course, you're a target. It feels good to siphon off the energy, and it's overwhelming, and it's exhausting, emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion. And there's Christina Northrup writes about energy vampires, which is supposed to be a really great book to read if you're curious. If you feel like your energy is being zapped all the time, it could be a good resource. 8, empaths become replenished in nature. Oh, I tell a lot of my clients this, my friends. Nature, of course, nature is a replenishment because if you're feeling emotion and energy, guess what? When you're going out into the trees, into the earth, into the water, that is a vibration, that is a life force, and you are interacting with that life force. There's that, that receiving and giving of energy, and it is such a gift if you can really, build your skill and connection with really feeling the replenishment of nature. 9, empaths have highly tuned senses. I'm trying to think now of other empaths. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, so maybe I almost feel like that can tip into sensory stuff, that maybe those highly tuned senses kind of tip into other places. And it could be different. Like, it could be more, again, my judgment, my kind of channel of energy would be the sensory issues. And again, I know the word issues doesn't sound really positive, but you look at a kid, right? And like, oh, this kid has sensory issues. Or when adults become adults and kids, maybe something changes or they never looked at it, then what happens with an adult that has a hard time being in the world and they're more than just empathic? 10, empaths have huge hearts, but sometimes give too much. I guess that could be true. Why would that not be true? Empaths, yeah, there's a giving energy and need, but there's also a dark part to that. Maybe we should cater to the darker energy. Because with an empath, if it's hard to feel other people's energies in disarray of disappointment and you want to fix it, you want to make it better because it's at the expense of you, because if you're feeling energy that feels too much, then you want to shift that. Again, this is just a Psychology Today's little 10 list, which is more maybe encouraging. But I would, again, the empath is a different journey for each person. And I'm sure if we got a bunch of empaths at a table, that, empaths that really accept they're empathic, that they're intuitive, and that they have an awareness. Not empaths are not really sure, or what is this about? I'm talking about that next level, really schooled, really refined energy of empath, and, really accepting it. Like, yeah, I'm an empath, and this is who I am, and this is how I feel, and this is my connection to the world, and doing the work around that, not just getting, trampled by it. And I get it. Empaths tend to be highly sick often. That's a very common thing. And yeah, when I was a kid, I had every sickness you can imagine. I was hospitalized and, over antibiotic and all that. And there was never like an understanding of that. And as I got older, there was more of a realization. And just even separating energy from other people from your own. And there definitely is a lesson in that. And there's definitely the self-care piece on what it looks like. And so what about women, men, mostly women, infertility? What is happening with the empathic woman? And I do receive a lot of clients that are empathic, and I could see it right away because I could tune into the energy. I could tell if somebody's more of a feeler, and some people have a very strong feelers, and they have a lot of energy that needs to be cleared out. And some people have a good balance between it, and they have an understanding of how to balance it out where it doesn't feel like it's so off. And energy is always changing, so we can absorb and take energy, but we also need to know when to release it. I remember, that reminds me, years and years ago, I went into a bar that had a smoking bar. I don't know why. And then I came back and I worked with my energy healer like weeks later. And I just felt so off. And she asked me, because there was so much smoke in my aura, I was like, what is she talking about? I don't smoke. And then I realized all that environmental toxicity and the people, it stayed in my energy field for quite some time, and she helped me clear it out, and it was so much better. And that's the thing, the empath, you have to make sure you have good energetic hygiene. I've heard that term before. I'm not sure whose term that is, but it's true. Where is your energetic hygiene? And when I'm working with empaths and I see an empath that's just a little all over the place and a little muddy, or if they're just kind of working through the next level, we're going to talk about it. I feel like empaths is my community. It's my tribe. And I want to see empaths flourish and use their abilities to its greatest expansion, not into the negative, I'm trapped in the darkness and I'm absorbing everything. Where you can do that, you can create the opposite. Again, I feel like that's so important. So when these women come in with fertility and they're empathic and they're looking into fertility treatments, hormones, or even natural conception, of course the empath natural conception is always the less intervention, the less harsh, the less trauma. And I'm very honest about this, that IVF, of course, depending on the person, that there can be levels of trauma and disappointment and loss and overwhelm. And I find that empathic women with IVF, they have to be very, very conscientious and move very slowly in this IVF process, because it is overwhelming when you're, bombarding your body with certain hormones and certain energies. And so I've seen women, empathic women, have done IVF and have just been had to move away from it. It just was not, it was not their path, and having to see, what that looks like for them, and how to regroup and maybe do it in a more gentle way. And there are more gentle options in the creative conception journey for some women. And so if you're an empathic woman and you're like, and you have to include that in your your conception support, like what that looks like, your acupuncture, your your herbal support, your vitamins, your food, your therapies, whether they're massage therapies or even spiritual coaching therapies. Like, how are you now weaving into this? Okay, you're an empathic person now, and you're moving into this conception journey. And again, maybe you have to do intervention in IVF. There is a certain awareness and connection that has to be looked at it a certain way. And again, remember, if you're an empath, you're not a cookie cutter empath. You are a different, wherever you fall. Maybe your empathy is your empathic abilities are just beginning, or maybe they're so highly out of control because you haven't had a space to find the balance of it and to kind of connect yourself. And what about spirit baby? What about baby's energy with empaths? Oh boy, that baby has their own energy, their own body. You will feel it, you will sense it, you will know it on many different ways. And maybe even now when you're in your spirit baby practice in conception, that you're able to tune in and pay attention to how energies move. And you're probably someone that senses deeply. And how can you nourish that journey, whether you're in conception or in pregnancy with babies, their own energy. And a lot of times that baby will probably be empathic as well. That's very common. Not that you're holding that out, but you get to see that once, the energy is earth, and that being tends to, grow and develop. Like, where is that energetic, empathic connection and communication that you get to build between, parent and child. And so the empath. Let's see here. So the list, that's what I was going to go over. There's 17 types. Again, that could be a very big list. Let's see what the list says. Because this is new to me. This is a new list. I'm not, this is not something I was that really familiar with. So the AEA accredited types of empaths. Sounds so official, right? Here we go. And this is from AmericanEmpathAssociation.com. So first one they have here is the emotional empath. The emotional empath is known for sensing and feeling the emotion of others. And there's more about it, but I'm just going to kind of just go through the titles. And then you can always visit AmericanEmpathAssociation.com and read more about it. There's the medical empath, or they put in parentheses a physical empath. The medical empath will feel or know other people's aches, pains, and illnesses. They may be an intuitive awareness or sense of what symptoms someone else has. And so that's what I was talking about myself before I was the physical empath. So I guess it is a thing, medical empath, which would make sense as medical intuitive. Animal empath, or the fauna empath. An animal empath is the ability to tune into the thoughts and feelings of other animal life around them to the degree that they can interact and positively influence the animal's behavior. Nature empath, or plant empath. Nature empaths are people with strong connections to nature and what plants and trees need and can provide. They are gardeners and growers who love being in nature. Intellectual empath. Intellectual empaths understand how the mind works and can easily grasp someone else's perspective. Precognitive empath, or intuitive empath. Precognitive empaths experience visions about future events. They might experience these as premonition feelings or as a vivid dream. Geomanic empath, or environmental empath. Geomanic empaths feel the energy left in a specific place. They can walk into a room and know that a major argument took place there just hours earlier. Spiritual empath. Spiritual empaths have wisdom about another person's connection to the divine. They understand deeply the relationship other people have to a higher power. Claircognizance empath. Claircognizance empaths can see past body language, facial expressions, and words to understand another person's deep secrets. Medium empath. Medium empaths have an established connection with the supernatural world. Psychometric empath. Psychometric empaths recognize the energy in inanimate objects, including clothing, photographs, keepsakes, and jewelry. Crystal empath. Crystal empaths feel a powerful connection to crystals. Telepathic empath. Telepathic empaths are often considered mind readers since they can experience another person's unexpressed thoughts. Mechanical empath. A mechanical empath innately understands machines. Astral empath. These empaths can directly interact with astral beings, including fairies, angels, or ETs. Law enforcement empath. Law enforcement empaths share the ability to solve crimes and find missing persons. Molecular empath. Molecular empaths experience others in the molecular level, which gives them a deep understanding of a person's essence. I really like this. Now that I read this, this makes sense. So I feel like what they're trying to really connect with in this kind of 17 types is that there's a level of empathy with all people, right? Almost all people, because we know that there are violent and horrific things that happen that maybe there was no alignment there. But some of those things on that list to me, and maybe other people are sensing into that, sound like clairvoyance, clairsentience, mediumistic ability, psychic awareness, telepathic, telekinesis, connections. And so again, I'm curious. I'm hoping that other people are curious too, to expand and explore what is this ability to be an empath, and what degree does that look like? And, as I said, your baby being may have a level of empathy and connection of sensitivity. And I've seen that with some babies that have a very strong sensitivity energy that they're going to bring into this world. And that needs to be loved, held, and, created in a sacred way that, children that are sensitive, what is that like for them? And how can you build, a protective space really in the very beginning, and then having them kind of experiment and be a part of the world. And I'm thinking right now, because I know some really sensitive children that are very empathic, and it can be very overwhelming. And what happens with empaths is that they can move into anxiety, a lot of anxiety, and just nervousness, anxiousness, and it could be very debilitating for that. And so some will have to go on medication. That's very common. Don't let that scare you. Just because you're an empath doesn't mean you're going to have to go on medication, but there are some empaths that's the only way they can really kind of function in the world. And so, really tuning into where is your level of empathy, empathic abilities. I keep saying empathy, but I mean empathic abilities. Like where do you fall in? Maybe you're one of those 17. Maybe it's something you're just discovering right now and you're not sure. And knowing how that plays into your connection and conception and pregnancy is very valuable, because then you're going to create a level of ease and just more softening and awareness. And so one last piece here I'd love to share is the Empath Survival Guide. Here's the questions they ask. If you say yes to 1 or 3, then you are an empath. And so 1 is, have I been labeled as too emotional or overly sensitive? 2, if a friend is distraught, do I start feeling it too? 3, are my feelings easily hurt? 4, am I emotionally drained by crowds, require time alone to revive? 5, do my nerves get jarred by noise, smells, or excessive talk? 6, do I prefer taking my own car places so that I can leave when I please? 7, do I overeat to cope with emotional stress? And then 8, did I count the right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 8. Am I afraid of being engulfed by intimate relationships? Again, the Empath Survival Guide, something to explore. That is JudithOrloff.com, how to know if you're an empath. And she also talks about practices and strategies to center yourself. And I feel like that was really helpful too, the way she goes into, meditative practice, looking at your needs, making sure you're being mindful of where you are. And even, meditation's not just the end of the day or the beginning of the day. It can come throughout the day. Little moments of rebooting, checking with your energy, I feel is important. I like essential oils. I have these little rolling balls, and I'll just smell them in the car, just kind of reboot, like, where am I? Feel the grass, feel nature. So it's a practice that's all throughout the day, not just a practice, okay, here's this 1 hour of time I carved out. It's ongoing when you're an empath, and especially if you're in fertility. It could be so overwhelming by the world, especially if you have infertility and you're struggling and it's again, it's overwhelming. You're feeling so much, and then you're going, okay, well, what does that mean? It's okay. I'm telling you now, it's okay. Give yourself permission to be a sensitive being and to know how to take care of yourself. Learn about an energy modality. I always tell empaths, learn Reiki, polarity therapy, IET, pranic therapy. There's hundreds of energy therapies to learn. But when you learn energy, then you're going to feel confident. You're going to feel more secure. You're going to trust your intuition in a different way. That this thing that we feel and sense into energetically is very real. It's not an illusion. It's not an imagination. It's not a fantasy. There's something happening, just like your connection with baby energy. Just like, tuning into your baby as you visually see it, psychically see it, sense into it through more of your kinesthetic self or through maybe one of your 17 empathic traits, wherever it is, paying attention to that, because, there is a value and a purpose to your awareness. And there is a certain way, again, when you're connecting with your own fertility journey and even with your spirit baby. And so I'm hoping that you can take all this, juicy goodness of empath energy and utilize it and put it to, how it will serve you and how you'll continue to build your own practice of connection and communication. And I want to thank you all for joining episode 71, A Sensitive Conception and Pregnancy, The Life of the Empath. If you like my podcast, please subscribe and leave reviews.
This is Spirit Baby Radio. Thank you for joining Kelly in the energy of awareness, love, healing, and soul communication. Please join the next episode at www.soulbabycommunication.com.